Is the only way to resist the devil. And that is to be in Christ. Like I said, Revelation is written for our endurance, not for us to be sad. We're about to read that other stuff here in a week or two. We have to dwell on the truth, which is where? Right here. We have to spend time with our Creator so that we can believe about us what He believes about us. Then those accusations don't matter because we know it's not true, because this is true. I am who I am in Christ, not who I am in my flesh, not who you say I am even, not who somebody else says I am, certainly not who the accuser says I am. I am who I am in Christ, and that's what His Word says. So we've got to read the Word. Now, all that said, here comes the encouragement. And this is one of the coolest verses in the Bible, and I bet you can guess it's 12:11. He says, how do we conquer? How do we conquer the enemy? How is this war won? Well, here it is. They conquered him by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony. That's how he's conquered. Look at Colossians 2. Jesus, at the cross, I talked about how Satan tried to prevent Jesus from being born. That's kind of that scene with the dragon and the baby being whisked away. Then from there, Jesus defames Satan at the cross. He looks stupid when Jesus dies on the cross, doesn't he? And he finishes the job in the resurrection. Ends that battle. That war ends right there. Look at Colossians 2, or just write it down, I'll read it. Colossians 2, 13 through 15. When you were dead in your trespasses and in the uncircumcision of your flesh, He made you alive with Him and forgave all your trespasses. No accusation. He erased the certificate of debt with its obligations that was against us and opposed to us, and has taken it away. How? By nailing it to the cross. He disarmed the rulers and authorities and disgraced them publicly. He triumphed over them in Him. Satan has been conquered, and he is being conquered as believers suffer for Christ. The blood of the Lamb. Listen to Isaiah 53, 4 and 5. Yet He Himself bore our sickness, and He carried our pains. But we in turn regard Him stricken, struck down by God, and afflicted. But He was pierced because of our rebellion, crushed because of our iniquities. Punishment for our peace was on Him, and we are healed by His wounds. Guys, that's the blood of the Lamb. That is why we conquer. Not because of me. I didn't read this. It says He conquered them by how many weeks a month they went to church and how much they gave in the offering. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say they conquered Him by how many good deeds they did or how much they did for others. No. It doesn't. Because then, if we did something bad, we won't be able to conquer. It's a good thing that it's not because of us, because we couldn't handle that. Now, I want to shift down to the word of our testimony. And this is where, in the context of the writing, there was very real physical persecution going on. The weapons of this world are not the weapons of God. And guys, all this world has on you is your body here. That's it. And I know it feels like more now because it's all we know. But in the context of eternity, it is not. All the world had on these believers was their body. They say, I'm a Christian, they got martyred. But that was it. God's weapons are not those weapons. And you got to ask yourself, and this is a sobering question, and I don't mean it to be, too extreme or whatever, but it's true. If you're not willing to die for Jesus, you got to ask yourself, am I really willing to live for Him? This isn't one of those, hey, would you do this or that things. I'm just saying, think about that statement. If I'm willing to die for Him, then I can truly be willing to live for Him. And the reason that makes sense is because Christ doesn't ask for half of you, does He? He gives all. He gave all for me, He gave all for you. So He asks for all of you. And the problem I think we have, especially in church sometimes, is we think that all for me means like a burden or a difficult, or I can't give all because the one I want to keep is better. But that's where we miss it. Because it's so much better if we give Him all of us. We just haven't experienced it yet because we haven't done it. So if we give Christ our all, we have joy that comes through your Creator. You were made for community with the Father. And when we give Christ our all, we have that community, we have that joy. There's no guilt in life, no fear in it. I looked this up out of curiosity because I had thought this had happened after the Civil War. So, Appomattox was April 9th, 1865. That ended the Civil War. As you know, there was no social media back then. There were no email. A lot of things people could get word around. There were 6 battles after Appomattox, after surrender. Right? So Lee surrenders to Grant, Appomattox Courthouse. A few hundred people died, a little skirmish there. There was some raiding, but I left that out. The last, and you know, with history back then, I'm sure somebody else died, but the last named person that died, the guy's name was John J. Williams. He died on May the 5th, 1865. I'm sorry, May the 10th. So we're looking at over a month later, there have still been 6 battles or skirmishes since surrender, since the war was over. And I thought about that just to say, the war is over. Like, Christ has won. If you have given your life to Christ, if you have accepted what He's offered you, now again, I'm not talking magic prayers or anything. I'm talking about in your heart. You know, if we have given Christ our heart, then we are in Christ and we are secure. We just did a whole worship off of assurance of salvation. You're secure. But there's still battles. Satan knows the war's over too, but he's still battling. And he's going to keep battling. And the people he's going to battle are going to be you and me if you are a believer in Christ. And the only way that we wage war against that is through the blood of the Lamb and through the word of our testimony. And that word is right here. So I would just encourage you to remember to take heart that this is a real battle, and it's a real battle for all of us. And the enemy's going to keep coming. But the victory is won. And I have to remember that when I'm still in these skirmishes after the fact, kind of like these battles. You know, they estimate 750,000 people died in the Civil War. I wasn't able to get a number on how many people died after. But think about those lives lost after surrender. For what? I mean, you could say that about the whole war, but you know what I mean, right? So let's not be that. Let's not be a casualty of a war that's already been won. Let's walk with the Word as we go forward. And I'm going to find our music. And if there's something you'd like to pray about, you know, you can come down here and do that. So we're going to be singing 480. And it's Trust in Him.
Standing as we sing.